for where we are at. I can talk to you about it. So if we go to the next slide, please. The two panels today we have is Oren Herskowitz with Columbia University Technology Ventures, and Rich Patember with the MITRE Corporation, as also a colleague of mine at the former Johns Hopkins University Applied Physics Laboratory. Both of them are going to give their insights today about what it is about technology commercialization, what it's not, how do you take an idea that you have in the middle of the night and be able to get that out on paper and then to the marketplace, and kind of some of the mystery away from that kind of technology commercialization 101. So with that, I want to go to the next slide. Is the value proposition for our nation HBCUs is that there is a lot of innovation. If you go back and think about, for example, the innovations that came out of the Tuskegee Institute with George Washington Carver, the technologies that came out of Howard University under Percy Julian, who was America's leading chemist, Charles Drew with the transport of blood. So as you know, we have well over 101 HBCUs, but many of them are doing research. And if we go to the next slide, please. This is an eye chart, but there's approximately 25 emerging research-intensive HBCUs. These are composed of the ones that are Carnegie classified R2, which there are currently 11 HBCUs, the 1890 institutions, which there are about 19, the 15 ABET accredited HBCU engineering schools, and then, of course, there are two 1862 HBCUs. University of the District of Columbia is one of them, with the University of the Virgin Islands. And so together, this is kind of the research ecosystem. If you look at the emerging research-intensive HBCUs, where you have the opportunities for technology commercialization. So if we go to the next slide, I'm very proud to say here at UDC has been around since 1851. It was formalized as UDC of three institutions in 1976. And one of the things we've done in our Office of University Research, with the support of President Ronald Mason and Provost Lawrence Potter, is be able to start push technology commercialization. So last year we had 7 provisional patents. We actually had our first here, which was in our School of Engineering and Applied Science, led by Dean Shetty. We are one of the 15 ABET accredited engineering programs. And then, of course, with a provisional patent, you have 12 months to reduce that down to practice. We were able, the University of the District of Columbia, to file our first formal patent this past April. Now, there are many other schools who are doing this. When I was at Morgan State, we set up our technology commercialization when I got there in 2012. We were just talking about filing our first patent, and since that time have put out a large number of both patents and provisional patents and IP disclosures, and we're doing the same thing here at UDC. In many of our other institutions like North Carolina A&T and Florida A&M, you've already filed patents. But now, what is the next step to, in some case, using the VC language? How do we monetize those patents, and how do we start a program in that? Also, for our audience, I'll say, there will be a report coming out from the National Academies of Sciences, of which I contributed to, which I did a survey of technology commercialization. And so feel free to contact me anytime to talk about this, or any of our speakers. My address is victor.mccrary@udc.edu, and our speakers will supply their information. So setting this as a context for a background of what we are as HBCUs and technology commercialization, it is my pleasure to introduce our first panelist, Oren Herskowitz with Columbia University. And he's going to talk about some of the things he has done and moving things forward. He's actually also starting to work. We're starting to do a cluster kind of together with Columbia. So with that, take it away, Oren.
Thank you so much, Dr. McCurry. I really appreciate it. I see a blank screen. Do people see me? I'll assume you do, but let me know if I need to do anything differently. Great. So I'm here to talk a little bit. Dr. McCurry asked me to talk a little bit about university tech transfer and innovation ecosystems. And by the way, my email's on the screen. I'm going to give that email again at the end. And I really do mean it. If anyone has any questions, please just reach out. One of our explicit missions at Columbia is a lot of the things we've learned about innovation, entrepreneurship, and tech transfer. We've learned from our other institutions who work together on trying to bring these innovations out of the lab and into the market to help society. And so if I can be helpful in any way to any of you, please just email me and I'm happy to answer any questions or share any material we have. I'm going to talk for about 15 minutes, 20 minutes, trying to lay out the picture of how these innovations work. Not so much the patenting process, not so much the filing of the first patents, but rather how do these innovations actually make it to market? And what are universities across the country doing to try and make that transition more smooth? So with that in mind, first of all, I think the most important thing to realize is this actually works. So university innovations make it to the market and have made a huge impact on society. I want to state here that the slide you're looking at these are not all Columbia's inventions, although some of them are. So Xalatan and Xalcom were invented at Columbia. Those are glaucoma medications from Pfizer. Our patents are behind Remicade, RiaPro, Tisabri, Erbitux. If you've ever bought a DVD player or a Blu-ray player, Columbia Technology is embedded in those as well. But there's many, many other inventions that have had a huge impact on our society in a variety of different ways from many, many institutions across the country. Anywhere where research is happening, there's the potential for that research to impact humanity in a positive way. And this has led to a really great series of commercial outcomes. So you can look here, by the way, these numbers here are about 40 years of data from, 30 years of data from across all US universities. So this is not Columbia again. But what you can see here is that there's, roughly for every $2 million of research funding that comes into an institution, typically an invention comes out. There's sort of it's a bizarre Fibonacci number across US institutions. And then we file patents on those, and those lead to products. And as you can see, that's led to 42,000 active license and option agreements, over 13,000 startups, over 150 new drugs and devices. This has been a huge boon, not only to those institutions, because the revenue flows back to the institutions, but to their local and regional and national communities in terms of jobs, taxes, exports, and most importantly, saving and improving human lives. So there's a variety of ways of looking at this. This slide happens to cover Columbia and the other schools we track, but it's just by way of example. Typically, when you're measuring tech transfer return on investment, the way we look at it is inventions per $100 million of research, licenses and options. So that's sort of inventions are like the inputs. Licenses and options are the outputs, meaning the technology has started its path towards the market. And startups is a particular way of looking at, obviously you could either license something to Pfizer or IBM or Google, or to a startup based on the innovation that is coming out of the university. So the good news is a lot of resources are already in place to help HBCUs and MSIs learn more about how to do this. As Dr. McCurry mentioned, there are quite a few HBCUs and MSIs that do very well at this already. But if you're interested in learning more, Almisha Campbell is one of the leaders within Autumn. She's at Jackson State, and her email's here. If you have questions about the resources available to help you do this, you can speak with her via email. She's offered to have anyone reach out. For instance, Autumn, which is our industry association, has an emerging members program whereby people who have not historically been part of the technology commercialization ecosystem can get a free membership to Autumn and can attend the events. You can see the pilot schools there. There's also a program called Enrich, which teaches faculty and students at HBCUs about technology commercialization and entrepreneurship. So my point being, there's many resources. By the way, I can share these slides if anyone wants them. Just email me. My email will be at the end, and I'll send you a copy of the slides. So the challenge, though, is that the end of our funnel, so you'll remember that funnel that I put up at the beginning. So the happy part of our funnel, where we've licensed something to a company or formed a startup, is unfortunately the really daunting and high risk part of the funnel of getting these things actually to the market and making an impact on humanity. Like when we license something to Pfizer, we celebrate, but only 1 in 100 inventions that Pfizer in licenses or creates will end up becoming a drug on the market. And similarly in venture capital, getting a startup started is great, but only 1 in 10 of those will end up making any kind of real economic or commercial or societal impact. So the real question is why? And why here is because on the left-hand side of the screen, you'll see there's the basic research and the early feasibility. Then you need technical validation and prototyping. You need market testing. You need product development, R&D, and sales. And the challenge is that the federal government really only funds the first tranche there, the basic research, and a little bit of the early feasibility testing. And the industry and venture capital community typically only funds the stuff on the far right. And so the middle is the valley of death, or as the NSF likes to call it, the ditch of despair, which for some reason I find even more depressing than the valley of death. But anyway, that's the valley. And so really the question is, if we want intellectual property to thrive, not only for the benefit of our startups, but also just to get to the market, we need to help this stuff succeed, not just launch, but succeed. And the good news is once you get that going, it can create a flywheel and it can start to take on momentum of its own. So if you look at this now is just Columbia. These are the startups that were launched on Columbia Innovations. Starting in 2008, you'll see we were doing sort of 5 or 6 a year. And then we started to put a lot of resources in place to try and make this more productive. And now in the recent years, we've been launching 25, 27, 30 startups a year based on Columbia's intellectual property. This is just, I mean, you could look at any one of these, but these are examples of the ones that are launching out of Columbia. And it's a mix. It's probably about half life sciences and half physical sciences in general. Although I should say life sciences these days, sorry, something's beeping. I'm just going to turn that off for 1 second. Life science, sorry about that. Life sciences these days also means life sciences and engineering. So anyway, the good news is this can have a positive flywheel, but the question is, how do you get that flywheel going? What can you do to influence it? And so we think of this typically as there's the ideation part, which is great, but then there needs to be validation, education about how to do this, and launching the technologies. So what I'm going to do now is take you through some examples of how Columbia has done this. And the point here is not to brag. The point here is that almost everything I'm showing you could be replicated at other institutions if you choose to do so. And again, I'm happy to share templates for anything we've done with any of you. So if any of these are interesting, just let me know via email. So first of all, what does innovation need to survive the valley of death? There needs to be customer discovery. Customer discovery essentially means that you are actually solving a problem that anyone actually has. I call universities, great hammer factories. We're great at creating hammers. The challenge is we don't always know what nail they're aimed for. So customer discovery is making sure there's a nail that matches your hammer. Entrepreneurship education. So you need to teach the faculty and the students how to launch their own startups. They need to be connected with mentors and coaches from industry, from venture capital, from foundations, from patient advocacy groups to really learn what the problems are. They often need to develop prototypes, sort of working prototypes, minimum viable products to make sure that the solution they have actually can be implemented. They need a little bit of validation capital. So not the big venture capital money, but sometimes $10,000, $25,000, $50,000 to prove out their idea and show that it works. They need connections to venture backable entrepreneurs. So sometimes the graduate student or postdoc are the right people to launch the company, but often you need a venture backable entrepreneur, meaning typically someone who's done it before. You need access to venture capital and industry scouts. You need early technical and business hires, and only then can the startup likely succeed. So I'm going to take you through some of the examples of what Columbia's done. And this, I'm not going to go in detail, but these slides are available. I want to keep us moving. But we have set up a variety of engagement opportunities for university students around commercialization entrepreneurship. Some of these are for graduate students, like our Technology Ventures Fellows Program, where we have 35 graduate students from across the university working part-time in our office, helping us commercialize our inventions. Some of them are undergrads, and we have one program specifically for underrepresented minority and female founders and scientists who are interested in learning about this, called the DICE program, which we're very happy about in both life sciences and engineering. We teach a class called Intellectual Property for Entrepreneurs. And by the way, I should say this entire class is available for free online to anyone who wants to see it. We make this class open to anyone who registers. So last time, I think we had 350 students taught online. And now the class is recorded. So you can watch the entire thing, or you could have your students and faculty watch it if you want to learn more about how intellectual property is used to create startup companies, how the deals are negotiated, what venture capitalists are looking for, et cetera. We created template pitch materials. So this is a great trick for helping your faculty and students get started, is you can, instead of relying on them to create their own pitch materials, you can create a template deck for them. And then all they need to do is fill it in with their information. Is it perfect? No, but it's a great start and often helps people get some momentum going in this process. We have executives and residents in our office who volunteer to work for free to help our faculty and students get these inventions out of the lab and into the market. Every year we rotate in a new group of 8 to 10 mentors and executives. So this is the current crop of mentors, but any institution can do this based on either your alumni or the business leaders in your community, as long as they're willing to give, about a day a month worth of time to help provide input. We created discounted and deferred rates from startup attorneys. We found that a lot of our local startup attorneys in New York were not familiar with the way we did our licensing agreements. And so we brought them sort of under the tent and showed them how we do things and got them to agree to discounted and deferred rates for our startups, so that when a startup coming out of Columbia wants legal representation, they can call Goodwin or Wilson Sonsini or Mintz Levin or Fenwick and West and have a pre-packaged set of terms where they're discounted and deferred rates to help them get off the ground without burning through a lot of cash. And again, I'm sure many of these law firms would be very happy to include your institutions in their set of universities that they offer these terms to. We also went to a standardized set of terms for when we do a startup. Every university startup coming out of Columbia gets essentially the same terms. It's $1,000 up front for the option or license. We get 5% equity with something called anti-dilution, which I can explain if people don't know what that is. So 5% equity with anti-dilution. We defer the past patent expenses so the startup can get off the ground without burning through cash. And the other terms are set appropriate for the industry. So like a therapeutic or a diagnostic or a medical device or a piece of cybersecurity might have different royalty rates, but the rest of the terms would be the same. But the principle is no one at Columbia gets a better deal than anyone else at Columbia. We run a variety of workshops on startup company formation and growth, which have been very, very popular. Some of these are Columbia only. Some of these are opened up to the community. We support people in SBIR and STTR applications. Dr. McCrary can probably do a better job of this than I can, explaining how SBIR and STTRs work. But they are free money from the federal government to launch startups based on federally funded inventions. It is an amazing source of non-dilutive capital, and it's not taken advantage of nearly as much by many of our country's entrepreneurs. Speaking of real estate, because I mentioned there's physical incubators, but it's not just about Columbia. If you look around our community in West Harlem, Washington Heights, and Inwood, we are what we call an innovation spine. So there's Columbia, the main campus, the medical center, but we also have the City University of New York, or CUNY. We have the New York Structural Biology Center, and we have a variety of biotech hubs that are springing up in the neighborhood. So we all work together incredibly closely to apply for grants together, to run accelerator programs together, and to try and support our community in any way we can. It's not all about your own institution, it's about sharing as broadly as you can. Some examples of that: we run a variety of programs jointly with New York City, New York State, and local research institutions. For instance, we run what's called the RTW Charitable Foundation Accelerator up here at the top. So that is a rare disease, and in particular pediatric rare disease accelerator that a foundation wanted to fund. We realized we have a great pediatric and department at Columbia and a great group of faculty working on rare diseases, but we don't think we had enough deal flow to run an accelerator just at Columbia. So we opened it up to our peers at Rockefeller, Mount Sinai, Sloan Kettering, NYU, CUNY, and others to try and get more innovations through this pipeline. We're doing something very similar the state funded a $40 million biodefense commercialization fund to try and make sure the next group of startups that can protect us from the next COVID are going to be strong and can benefit all New Yorkers. And so that's a program that we're running in collaboration with Mount Sinai, but it's open to any researcher in New York State. So these programs can really go beyond the walls of the institution. We also do run some physical incubators. We have one downtown for sort of software-based startups, and then we have a biotech startup across the street from the medical center, which is run by Alexandria Life Sciences. So, and we have a variety of lab-to-market accelerator programs as well. We had one in cybersecurity, which was funded by New York City. We have one in clean energy funded by New York State. We have the pandemic response one funded by New York State, and we have a variety of them in life sciences. So I think that pretty much wraps up my talk. I'm going to stick around. Obviously, I will be available for questions and comments during the panel. But if you have questions, please feel free to email me. You can find my email at oren.herskowitz@columbia.edu. As Dr. McCrary said, we're looking forward to working with him and a variety of other leaders in the community to be helpful in any way we can and try and spread the word. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you, Oren. That was fantastic. And I hope our audience out there heard him. I mean, he had a lot of information. So oren.herkowitz@columbia.edu. This is free information. Anywhere else you'd have to get it. He's put it in one package. This is fantastic. And so, again, please reach out to him to get the information, or reach out right out to me. We'll make sure you get that information. Our next panelist is Rich Patember, who's with the MITRE Corporation, formerly used to be with Johns Hopkins University Applied Physics Laboratory. He has the distinction of being one of their top 10 inventors over the lifetime of the course of the history of that organization. And he's going to share a little bit about, from the inventor's point of view, of coming up with innovation, being an inventor, what's it take to kind of go forward. So whereas Oren was giving you, okay, now you got the idea, here are some things to go forward, Rich is going to say, okay, what do you do when you wake up and you got that feeling, or you're walking down the street, you see that new idea, where do you go next? Rich, take it away.
Thank you. Thanks, Vic. First of all, Oren's presentation was right on. It was one of the best presentations I've heard on tech transfer. He's really nailing it, and I hope people have the opportunity to sit down and watch it again and take it apart piece by piece, because there's so many gems in that presentation. So my presentation is not about me, but I'll start off with a little bit of introduction about myself. I'm a chemist. I got my PhD at Hopkins, and I became a chemist because I want, like every young person, I want to change the world, and I wanted to do good things and make things happen. And I quickly learned that if I was going to try to change the world, I had to invent something. I had to create something new. And I did. As a graduate student, I discovered a new computer chip, a new type of computer chip made out of plastics. And I think it was world changing, but it pretty much just sat on the shelf. It didn't go anywhere. An invention that doesn't make it to market is just a piece of paper like a publication. And I think that it's critical. And I think, yes, you need a tech transfer office, but it's also critical for the inventors to be hands-on. The inventors have to be very aggressive and say, I'm never like a football. I'm not going to put the football down. I'm going to keep pushing that football, moving that football down to get a touchdown on it. I have multiple inventions, and 5 times in my career, I was able to do a tech transfer to industry. Most of them didn't go anywhere. And I don't know why. Turning it over to a company, as Oren said, it's like probably 1 in 100 make it to product. But on one of my last inventions, I decided to stick to it all the way. A small company picked it up, and I basically nudged myself in the middle of it. And on Mondays, I would go over to this company and sit there and work with them. I took the invention and I pushed it. In order for the company to take it, they had to come out and reproduce the work I did. That's very critical. If company's going to take it, they want to make sure that what you're giving them is what you promised to give them and has been reduced to practice. So I actually invited a company down from Philadelphia to sit in my laboratory and watch how I made this pathogen protection program. I then worked with the company. I go over there on Mondays, and I did everything I could, including helping building a prototype that they could actually market to take to shows. Took it all the way to completion. We got it up on the market. We got on a GSA list. The technology was basically a way of killing anthrax in the air. It all worked out great, but luckily for the country, we never had another anthrax attack so far. And so the technology is kind of hanging up. But at that point, there really wasn't much I could do. I have some slides I'd like to show, and the slides are not so much about me, but at the MITA Corporation last year, we had a retreat, and the MITA Corporation asked me, could I give a talk on innovation? And I mean, you can pick up anything today, and innovation's become a buzzword. There's the real science of innovation, and there's the buzz part of the innovation. And I want to go through it a little bit, and I want to show. Actually, I want to show my slides if that's possible. Can I show my slides? Are these mine or can't? I'm gonna share slides. Are these mine? Give me a second to make sure this doesn't look like what I finally wound up with. Let me. Let's see. This is what I have. So let's see. I changed these around a little bit. So let me hit the share button again. Share slides. No, they're not showing up. Let's try it again. Okay, well, these are slides from the other day. So give me one more minute. If not, we'll just go with what we have. Remove from stream. Share. Share screen. Now let's try that. Okay. Can that be seen? Can my slide be seen? Can anybody get back to me on what I'm showing? Hello? Okay. Okay, I've got.
Hey,
I have two screens.
Your slides are showing on screen, just FYI.
Okay, my slides are showing on screen. Are they ones that have my email at the bottom, or are they ones that have my telephone number? Hello?
Your telephone number.
Okay, that's not the one I want to show. So can you kill that one and let me show, take that one off and let me show the other one. I've updated those slides. Can you remove those? All right, let's try it again. Okay. Can somebody step in? Let me know if you're seeing my slide or me.
So, Richard, right now The only thing coming through being shared is your slide with your phone number on it.
But I just clicked on the slides that show my Hopkins email address. It says I'm sharing. Let me go back and. No, I don't upload a file. I guess you could take this out. So what you see is that set of slides. Can you take that off the screen so I can share my screen?
Yes, sir. Just hit the button.
Hit what button?
The share button at the bottom of your screen. You should see a button.
Okay, I've been hitting that one. And okay. Let's try it again. Share screen. So do you see my screen now? Hello? Hello?
Hey, Richard, can we go with what you have here?
You can't. Okay, I will. You can't. You can't capture the ones, my new ones.
No, sir. Every time you upload, this is the version that pops up.
Okay. I guess the metaverse isn't perfect yet, is it?
Nah.
Okay.
Sorry
All
about
right.
that.
Great. We'll just go with this one. I was trying to put my email address up. It's got my telephone number. This is my personal number. I appreciate it if I don't get calls on this one. I'd rather have you send me an email, and you can use Patember at JHU.edu. So let's go to the next slide. Well, when I was asked to give a presentation about innovation and invention, today the word innovation has become a buzzword. Every organization's talking about trying to be innovative, and they call innovation anything under the sun you can think of. The director of the Applied Physics Laboratory at Hopkins one time joked and said that, well, innovation can be as simple as, instead of putting cheese and mustard and meat between the sandwich, if you reverse the order of the meat and the mustard, that's an innovation. And in some ways he's right, but that's not a real innovation. We've gotten to be to the point that anything you can think of is innovation. So what I want to do is I want to talk a little bit about the role of real innovation, how it can help the university, how it can help inventors, and how it interrelates with inventing. So what is real innovation? Innovation is a product or a process that you didn't know you wanted, but once you have it, you can't believe you can live without it. And that's actually the same quote that they use at Apple, and the same quote that they use at the Defense Advanced Projects Administration. You want to make something that provides a product or a process that people, when they get it, want to have it, want to own it. So the two words innovation and invention overlap with each other. An invention is a novel device, a method composition. And inventions are patents, and they put out an invention. And innovation, on the other hand, refers to something new or to a change made to an existing product or idea. The first telephone was an invention. The first cellular phone was a combination of invention and innovation. And the first, something is my slide going on top of it. The first smartphone was actually an innovation. So the way to look at the way the process of innovation is, it's these three gears all interrelated with each other. First of all, we have basic research that takes place. That's up at the left, the small, up in the left. That's what universities do. That's what most people at universities set out to do. They want to create new materials, new ideas, and create new knowledge. Well, sometimes, as Oren talked, some of these new concepts that we come up with are at the left-hand side of the Great Divide, and there's not much you can really do with a brand new idea like that. Rather, we have to move to the second gear. The second gear is sometimes science and technology and engineering actually solves problems, and problem solving is really supports us in solving, making new solutions to problems that we have. These are then connected to inventions and to innovation. So people basically on this will say, look, I created something new. They apply for an invention and they get the invention. The invention itself, as I said, is not the end point, but rather it's only probably the beginning point of it. And there the invention interacts with innovation and we get product solutions taking place. So innovation flows, I won't go too much deep, innovation flows from inventions. Both companies and governments spend a lot of time thinking about this, and they try to harness innovation and invention. The innovation invention process is what drives the economy of advanced countries. Both the United States and China are working very hard to be the most innovative country in the world. And we see a lot of in the news, we see a lot of tugging back and forth between the two organizations. Do they uphold each other's patents, or are they stealing concepts from each other? Because everybody knows that the countries that are the most innovative are going to be the most successful in the 21st century. So I just picked here a few of the inventions that changed the world. You can probably come up with your own. So these are inventions, and they're patented. One of them is from 1959, was the three-point seatbelt. It's saved tremendous number of lives. After I think it was done by Volvo. After it was done, a lot of innovations have come about it. The one beneath it is actually maybe was one of the earliest inventions, and that's the compass. The compass was 2002 BC to 20 AD. That allowed countries and sailors to sail around the world and basically sail over the horizon, and allows us to discover everything, including the United States. The next one is the transistor, and actually Vic worked at Bell Labs. The transistor was discovered in 1948. It was, if you see the picture, it's pretty large. After the invention of the transistor, a lot of innovation took place to convert that little device into what we call microcircuits today. The one at the bottom is actually one that's arguably maybe the most important invention in the 20th century, and that's penicillin. And penicillin saved so many different lives. We know back in the Civil War, more people died of infections than they actually died from the war itself. So one on the right hand side was the inventing of the printing press. And the printing press allowed us to get information out to the masses, and it definitely changed the world. So these are the kind of major inventions that take place, and they're important for changing the world, building economies. I'm not going to go through this one in any depth, but there's a long road from an invention to an innovation. In World War II, some physicists discovered the magnetron, and magnetron was used to generate microwaves, and it was used as part of a radar system. While they're working on it, a Raytheon engineer had a chocolate bar in his pocket. Testing it out, he discovered that the chocolate bar melted in his pocket. Well, that was serendipity, and discovered something. He then took and tried to pop popcorn and made an egg using these microwaves. So Raytheon filed a patent for this, for the microwave cooking process, in 1945. 2 years later, they built a product called Radar Range, which was the first microwave oven. The first microwave oven was big as a refrigerator, heavier, and it took a tremendous amount of plumbing to make it work. So the first microwave oven weighed 750 pounds. The Raytheon then took and sold this invention to Tappan Stove. They made a device. They tested out in a restaurant in Boston. The original microwave device on today's cash level would cost $16,000 to $24,000. Today, Tappan did a 220 volt. But after that, there was not so much more invention in it, but it was a tremendous amount of innovation. And today, you can get down to Costco or Walmart, you can buy a great microwave oven with all kinds of features on it, probably for $99. So I put together this slide. We can see back in World War II, we had the invention of a vacuum magnetron, and all down the right-hand side, the process of many years, we have the current microwave ovens. So that's the road from innovation to invention. Sometimes what you invent will wind up in products you had no idea that was going to wind up there. But it's important to do both aspects of this work. If you just had the Magnetron and you didn't push it anywhere, yes, it would be a military solution, but you wouldn't get the products for society we have on the right-hand side. So another important invention is the microprocessor. The microprocessor was invented in 1972, and it was a device that had thousands of chips on it and one individual board. That was an invention. But after the invention of the microwave, there's been a tremendous amount of innovation taking place. Today in our automobiles, we have probably dozens of microprocessors in it that control our cars and control the airplanes. Everything from the seat belts to the speaker systems to the braking systems. We have games taking place, the innovation of people playing computer games. If we look at the lower right-hand side, we can see today's modern aircraft engine is full of innovations, all based on microprocessors. The simple GPS is down at the bottom, which is GPS system is based on that. And even software packages like Excel, which changed the world in business and science, is basically part of this innovation. Steve Jobs made the iPod. And actually, I say that the iPod is an innovation as much as it is a invention. And the reason is when Steve Jobs did this, I want to introduce it. They basically had all the components to make the iPod. They had music, they had digital music, they had headphones, they had speakers, they had a control panel. And what Apple did is actually took all these little components, put it together, and they actually duct taped it together in one piece and put it together. Based on that first prototype, they got involved in it, they designed it, they performed ergonomics on it, and we came up with the iPod. Today, the iPod's been sidelined today, and all those features through innovation have wound up into the iPhone. So we can see that sometimes an innovation can drive a lot of products and be successful for corporations. Another one is the personal computer. The IBM's personal computer came out, and it's a combination of both innovations and inventions. Well, innovations are hard. I'm not trying to dismiss it. An invention is hard to do, but also the road to innovation can be very discouraging. If I give any advice on it, don't give up. Keep working the issue on it. I think sometimes companies today's world, pay lip service to it, but they're not really putting the resources behind it. You have to put a lot of money behind getting something to market. It's very expensive unless I get absolutely lucky. So we have to understand what's going on, and you have to be able to put all this together. Again, I'm going to skip these slides. These were not supposed to be the last ones. Okay, I want to talk a little bit about what happens in the world that drives both inventions and innovations, and to some extent, major events. Today was I did put the slides up. I don't have the slides on the set. COVID, the current pandemic is driving a tremendous amount of innovation and invention taking place. We've seen everything from new mask technologies, new polymer technologies, new rapid testing techniques, being able to do molecular biology, ship those files around the world electronically. That has awoken the scientific and engineering community. We're getting a tremendous response to it. But I want to go back to a personal one that I'm aware of. And Sputnik was in 1957. I was a little kid at the time, and the Russians launched Sputnik. When the Russians launched Sputnik, the American people felt that we were behind in the space race, and they panicked. And it was something that that small little ball went around the world with a little beeping signal. At that time, the defense community went hyper, and at the same time, too, a lot of other things took place. A colleague of mine at the Johns Hopkins Applied Physics Laboratory, shown on the right-hand side, his name is Bill Geyer. And Bill Geyer went in and knew that Sputnik was traveling overhead. He went in and asked for IRAD money, which is venture capitalist money, you might call it, or basic research money. He went into his supervisor, George Weifenbach, and he said, I have an idea. He said, I would like to set up 3 receivers on the front lawn of Johns Hopkins. I want to triangulate them. And what I want to do is I want to see if I can determine where Sputnik is as it travels over the Johns Hopkins University. what doesn't happen today, he instantly got the money. He went out in the front lawn and set up these 3 receivers, and he was actually able to listen to Sputnik. And he was actually, because of the 3 receivers, actually determined the exact position of Sputnik as it traveled around the world. Well, that was innovative. That was really great. But what happened was, at the end of this, Bill and George sat around and said, well, wait a minute. If we can determine what Sputnik is, what if we turned it around? What if we put 3 satellites up in space? Could we find our location on Earth? They went ahead and did it. They talked to the United States government. They talked to the Navy. The Navy funded Johns Hopkins University to start building satellites. And Johns Hopkins built a set of satellites that they put up up in the air so that they can find Navy ships anywhere in the world. The system worked out. It was the beginning of the global positioning system, and it actually got the Navy involved in building satellites and the Johns Hopkins Applied Physics Laboratory. Interesting. Johns Hopkins is a not for profit, and GPS was a big product at APL until the first commercial product came out, like the Garmin, and APL had to get out of the area because they're not allowed to compete with industry. But it was amazing what took place, and a little known effort on it. I'm a sailor, and in some of my sailing books, it talks about this GPS being discovered here. So I think this is a great example of what happens when something happens in the world and we have to respond to it, and what we can do as scientists and engineers. I want to talk another brief area on it, and it's innovation and disruptive innovation. And I talk about this because we had a director at the Applied Physics Laboratory who came from Bell Labs, and when he became the director of the Applied Physics Laboratory, he instilled in us that we have to watch out for disruptive innovation. And the example he gave was that the telephone company was very happy with landlines. They controlled Bell Labs and they controlled all the landlines all around the country. And somebody started talking about cell phones. Well, they didn't get involved in it that early, but they did later on as the process. And what they found out was that had they not gotten in it, they could have missed the entire area. So innovation and disruptive innovation are important. So we can see here this process. I'm gonna wrap it up. The last one is colleagues of mine got the Nobel Prize in chemistry. I won't go through it. If somebody wants to talk to me about later on, they found a piece of plastic that looked like it was conductive like a metal. They studied it. They added some chemicals to it, and they made the first conducting plastic material on it that conducted like a metal. And the 3 of these colleagues got the Nobel Prize for this area. So we can see there's always an element of serendipity in these processes taking place. But I'm going to wrap it up right there. That's okay.
Okay. Thank you, Rich, and thank you, Oren. This is great, and I hope my audience has had a couple of takeaways from this. First of all, there's the ideas, okay? Then there's, on the other side, there's the processes for taking those ideas and commercializing. But in the middle, there is a lot of serendipity, okay? But as I always say, if you're not at the table, you're on the menu. So that means you've got to be out there. Okay, you've got to build these networks. You've got to know these people. You've got to get out of your own comfort space, because you can look what other people are doing and say, wait a minute, I saw that thing over there that I was working on. It could be applied to this, just like the Magnetron. And by the way, the Magnetron was invented by the British. They came over as part of the Tizard mission during World War II. Okay, and then Raytheon picked it up. And so with that right now, we have about 7 minutes left. I want to open this up for questions from the audience, as well as there are any final comments from Oren. Did you have a comment that you wanted to make?
I did. I loved Richard's talk. I thought that was great. The thing that struck me, just one point, the complicated part about this is, one of the words of wisdom you always hear about innovation and entrepreneurship is never give up. But on the other hand, there are plenty of bad ideas out there. or
new Coke.
Yeah, and there's good ideas that are 20 years too early. So we've been filing on carbon capture technologies for 3 decades now, and,
Yes.
and couldn't license them to anyone and couldn't get any startup funded until about 18 months ago. And now they're all gone with like $50 million Series A rounds. So like there's the wrong entrepreneur for the right problem. There's the wrong idea for the right problem. There's the right idea for the wrong problem. There's like, sometimes your timing's off. Sometimes the markets do it bad.
Well, you bring up a point. Timing and serendipity, other thing, because I won't tell you how old I am, but I remember, my mom took us up to the New York World's Fair. And you know what we saw? The picture phone. And this was one of Bell Labs, AT&T's pride inventions. But the picture phone did not go for another 30 years. Now, one of them was the limited technology. But also at the time, the audience was not ready for you, like you and I, where we do FaceTime. People were not ready to see themselves and show each other. And it was kind of an invasion of privacy. Nowadays, people are on Facebook. They use their cell phones. And so, again, another invention that was really revolutionary, but way, way ahead of its time. Yeah. And in this case, the timing was the audience that it was for. The audience of the 60s was not ready for the picture phone like the audience of the 2000s.
Right. And I think the important lesson, for the reason I mention it, is if you're an institution, there's no university on the planet, no matter how much money you have, no matter how big your endowment, that feels like you've got enough money, right? Like every university feels like it's nearly broke, no matter how broke it actually is.
Yes.
But so having the ability to recognize and having the network to help you recognize when something isn't worth pursuing, and therefore you shouldn't spend the $20,000 filing patents, and you shouldn't form a company, and you shouldn't spend years of your life away from your lab trying to commercialize it, is sometimes just as valuable as having the network that helps you do it.
One of the things I'll put out there for our audience, because some questions starting to come in, is one of the best programs, and there have been a lot of great programs come out of the National Science Foundation, was the ICOR program, which talks about this issue of customer discovery. And I'll make a good example. You could go in the lab and make a great rust-proof paint, okay, that can be applied to cars or other surfaces. It could last 100 years. But what happened was when they went to Ford or GM, they said, look, I don't need a rust-proof paint that lasts 100 years because most people don't buy cars that last 100 years. They turn them around within 5 or 6 years. And by the way, your paint costs $100 per pound, but my price sensitivity is 50 cents per pound that I want to put. And so if you think about that, the cost side of that is also innovative. How do you make a rust-proof paint that's 50 cents per pound that can be used by the auto industry, which doesn't have to last 100 years? And so the NSF ICOR program brought researchers in contact with entrepreneurs and business folks who had other constraints that if they applied that also to the lab would be very, very well. And of course, for example, we saw that in real life when we had to take with refrigerants. We had to change refrigerants, which were not fluorocarbon based and hurting the ozone, but were able to work in existing systems or systems that could be modified very cheaply. And so the people who had to think of that not only had to think of, oh, I've got a new type of refrigerant that won't hurt the atmosphere, but it's got to work with existing systems and does not cost the consumer anything. So
that's the heart of applied research. That's what the difference. Innovative, basic research is you just go out and try to create something. They don't worry about whether it costs $1,000 to put the coating on the car. Somebody then has to come in and say, how do I get that cost down? That work and research can be much harder than the original discovery to make it work to fix a problem. That's right. If I could give one last
go ahead, Rich.
Statement is to the inventors and the innovators. I've been teaching at Hopkins for a long time. I've had a lot of students, people at Columbia, universities, scientists all over the world. They're used to getting A's on everything they do. I mean, whatever science you take, you get an A in it, right? You get used to being successful. Everything that works for you. The minute you go into the laboratory and try to create something new, there's a 4-letter word out there. It's called fail. And you fail. And one of the things I've noticed about people trying to invent something is they're not used to failing. And they shy away from it if they fail. If you want to invent something, if you want to change the world, you have to stick your neck out there and you have to fail. And you have to fail again and keep failing until you finally fail forward and make something happen. There are a bunch of TED Talks out on it and a bunch of books written about it. Don't be afraid to fail. Get over the fact you're not taking a classroom where you're doing molecular biology or chemistry or physics. Fail. That's how we create something new.
I would recommend to our audience, if you get a chance, the History Channel has a good series on a number of people who made America and entrepreneurs.
Yeah.
And you should look at the life of Hershey and Hershey Chocolate. He founded a whole town, but he was on the verge of bankruptcy before he got the right formula to compete with the traditional European chocolates, because he was going to say, how can I make something cheap? How can I use milk, in particular sour milk, to make it? And it wasn't until probably the umpteenth time that they finally got the formulation right. And I mean, basically people's jobs were on the line. So this persistence that Rich brought up is extremely important. I got, one or two questions for you both. And that is this: could you really give us a realistic situation in the terms of, right now we are basically competing against the world. Innovation and talent really is distributed equally, but I believe access is not. How do we overcome to get that kid who might be, in West Baltimore or Southeast Washington or in Appalachia, that young woman or young man, how do we get them to be part of that ecosystem? And what can we do? One of the questions is, even parents. A lot of us, the parents, are saying, they don't have the background. Take it away. One question before we sign off.
So,
well, my parents never went to college, but I was interested in science at a young age. I was fortunate that my dad listened to me, and he would take me places that had science in it. That's all he could do to help me, but it kept me inspired in the area. I think brains are distributed equally all around the world. It doesn't matter who you are or what country you're from. Maybe what could be done is more mentorship, that maybe scientists, retired scientists, can work with some of these young people in maybe disadvantaged areas and support them and help them and kind of be like a big brother in the science area, and to nurture their creativity, to see that they get the best possible path forward in life.
And I'm going to have to run in a minute, but I did want to throw out there, I'm very proud to be serving a second term on what's called the National Advisory Committee for Innovation and Entrepreneurship, or NACI. It's in the Department of Commerce. I served under the Obama administration, took a break during the last administration, now back during the Biden administration. And we have our first meeting coming up in July. And this is one of those topics that actually this committee is meant to engage on. So if people in the audience I do not have any ideas. I was very privileged to grow up in New York City, and in an academic environment. And so I do not have any ideas on that one. But if other people do, oren.herskowitz@columbia.edu, and I will make sure your ideas get in front of the committee when we provide. And I'm going to have to sign off, unfortunately.
All right. Well, thank you, Oren. Well, with that, I'm going to say also contact me. I can vector you to Oren or Rich, as well as the activities we're doing here at UDC and what we're trying to do, also bringing the missing millions in with the National Science Board. I want to thank my two panelists today, because I think they've given you a whole lot of information. My email is victor.mccrary, MCCRARY @udc.edu. We are here to help you, because that young woman or young man may have the next solution, whether it be for cancer, whether it be for COVID, whether it be for how can we deal with food insecurity or climate change. And so I ask you to give your questions, but also one more thing is stay connected to STEM City and the metaverse. There is a lot of opportunity that is here, whether it's information for parents who have kids who are interested in STEM, whether it's information to be able to go to college or blue collar STEM or in the military. The STEM City is the place where it is all happening. And so I'm going to thank you, Rich. I've thanked Oren, and I'm going to turn this back over to Sterling. Thank you very, very, very much.
Thank you, Vic.